A Jewish ghetto at the heart of a Tuscan medieval gem is my talk tonight. And I think most of you listening know me. For those who don't, I'm an authorized guide for the region of Umbria. And the town I'm talking about tonight is a southwestern Tuscan little gem. And we're going to delve into this as well. We're going to talk about the magnificent little hilltop town of Pitigliano. It is carved into a tough rock plateau. We say tufo in Italian. Volcanic rock spewed there by the eruption of a volcano. And those of you who heard my talk on Bolsena will know exactly what that volcano was. It is today Lake Bolsena. It was an active volcano probably as early as 600,000 years ago, with a very serious explosion about 300,000 years ago. And the last explosion, probably about 80,000, or let's say vast eruption, about 80,000 years ago, spewing volcanic rock to the area of Pitigliano, southwestern Tuscany. It's about a 40-minute drive from Lake Bolsena, absolutely to be explored. And we're looking here at part of the medieval wall of Pitigliano, and you can see that the medieval wall is incorporated into the Etruscan wall. Pitigliano was probably settled in the Iron Age. There have been archaeologic findings found that date to about 1000 BC. It's said that the name derives from a legend. The legend is this, that in the Roman times, two thieves, one called Petilio and one called Celiano, had to flee Rome after the theft of the golden crown on the statue of Jupiter in the Capitoline Hill. Now, all legends have a thread of history, and we do know that a gens Petilia, a tribal people called the Petilia, lived in the area of present-day Rome in about 400 BC. Prior to the Roman domination of Pitigliano, the Etruscans settled here, as evidenced by various archaeological finds in the area, which date from about the 8th century to the 2nd century BC. And as I showed you in that photo, a section of the Etruscan wall is incorporated into the medieval wall. Now, I'd like to show you a bit of video here, because I think these images give you a wonderful idea of the beauty of this southwestern Tuscan hill town, Pitigliano. And I hope you will soon plan on a visit to Pitigliano. Isn't that splendid? The view as you arrive, and it perches on this tough rock plateau, so it was a perfect defensive point for the Etruscans, for the Romans, for the Longobards when they dominated Italy in this area at the end of the 6th century AD and the early 7th century AD. This was Lombard. This is the walk I took through Pitigliano here. You can see up there on the right, the Jewish ghetto. We'll be talking about it. This is the walk you'll take when you come through to visit Pitigliano. There's two main streets that wind through, and off them are narrow alleyways. And it seems that in Pitigliano, houses merge with the rock. People who settled here recognize this. They recognize the importance of being high up for defensive reasons. And the beauty of this town is really, sometimes you can't tell where a house ends and the tough rock plateau begins. You can see the road surrounding Pitigliano. That bell tower is the Cathedral of Pitigliano, which is about 18th century. So the Etruscans were here. They settled in the area, not just in Pitigliano, but other towns we'll talk about. Sorano, Sovana, Santa Fiora, we'll be talking about them. And outside Pitigliano, carved into the side of a tough rock plateau, is what they call the Tempietto, meaning small temple. This was a 4th century oratory. It was Christian. Archaeologists think that it might have been built into the ruins of an Etruscan tomb. Another site not to miss when you're in the area of Pitigliano is the Via Cave. There are walks through the tough rock plateau in Pitigliano, in Sorano, in Sovana. And it was really two events which shaped Pitigliano: the explosion of the volcano and the creating of the tough rock plateau. And then the coming of the Etruscans to this area, as I mentioned, maybe 8th century BC, 7th century BC, this mysterious people. Some archaeologists feel they came from present-day Turkey, others from northern Italy. And it was the Etruscans who established this strict bonding really, with the land. And they carved into the plateau. And they carved these narrow fissures, if they will. Sometimes the plateau is as high as over 20 meters. Archaeologists still don't know what purpose they had. Were they defensive to escape if the plateau was attacked, or their hill town, even it was then, or their settlement was attacked? Was it for drainage? Might it have been the route of processions to some sacred shrine dedicated to Mother Earth? We still don't know what the Via Cave's purpose was. The Via Cave area is also called the Cavone. A walk through the Via Cave around Pitigliano and other hill towns very close to this are a must for people who enjoy getting out in nature, enjoying the experience of archaeology combined with structures made by man. Here's a nice view of Pitigliano, and again, look at how the houses seem to merge with the tough rock plateau. So after the Etruscans, we have the Romans here, then we have the Longobards, and as of about the 11th century, the area becomes under domination of the Aldobrandeschi family, and Pitigliano is under the domination of Sovana. Sovana was an Aldobrandeschi contea. We get our word county from that. Contea would be residence of a count. And it is much stronger than Pitigliano initially, and then it falls out of favor, and Pitigliano becomes far more important. The Aldobrandeschi were relegated by Dante in the Purgatory, the 11th canto of the Purgatory, to purgatory for their superbia, or their pride. And it has been said about the Aldobrandeschi that they evidenced everything that is positive and everything that is negative about rulers. Now I want to show you the area we're talking about, Maremma. This is the area along the Mediterranean, the Tyrrhenian Sea of the Tuscan coast. Here we would have Umbria, because this is Orvieto. We're talking about Pitigliano. The Aldobrandeschi were from Sovana. Via Cave, those structures carved into the rock can be seen around Sorano. We'll also be talking later about Santa Fiora. So specifically now we're centering in on Pitigliano. Following the marriage of the Aldobrandeschi Countess Anastasia to Romano Orsini of Pitigliano at the end of the 13th century, the seat of power shifts to Pitigliano. And very much influential on the power of the Orsini and the counts of Orsini and their descendants will be Pope Nicholas III, who was himself an Orsini, Giovanni Gaetano Orsini. He was very famous for his nepotism. The people in the Middle Ages called the Orsini the Popolo dell'Orsa, the people of the bear. Orsini, bear. Orsa, people of the bear in what sense? That the mother bear, above all, thinks about what is necessary for her cubs. And Pope Nicholas III Orsini was extremely noted for his nepotism. The gifts he made to his relatives, that's going to raise the power of the Orsini counts, and it's going to increase their wealth tremendously. Conti di Orsini. They ruled in Pitigliano from 1336 to 1604, when Orsini will fall under the Medicis. And this is the coat of arms of the Orsini. And as of 1604, at that time, Pitigliano becomes part of the Granducato di Toscana, or the Great Duchy of Tuscany. And why does it go to Tuscany? It goes to Tuscany because it was basically sold off by a count, Gian Antonio Orsini, full of debts. He resolved his debts by giving his town to Tuscany. It was basically sold off to pay his debts. Palazzo Orsini backdrops the aqueduct built by the Medicis once they take power in the area. The aqueduct was built between 1636 and 1639, and this aqueduct was the first Maremma aqueduct built. 13 beautiful arches here and 2 enormous arches. And let me show you these enormous arches of the Aqueduct Medici, or the Medici aqueduct. And here through 2 of the arches, you can see the surrounding countryside. The Medici aqueduct is flanking Palazzo Orsini, and we'll be talking about that also. And I just want to show you this photo. This is a beautiful nighttime view of the Aqueduct Medici and the Palazzo Orsini, the Orsini Count's Palace. And the aqueduct's arches, the aqueduct, that is, feeds this fountain. This fountain was built in the mid-16th century. It is called La Fontana delle Sette Cannelle, the fountain of the 7 spigots. And from this fountain, from these spigots, will come the water brought to Pitigliano, thanks to the Medici aqueduct. It was financed by Count Gaetano Orsini. And there are 7 faces, each of them clenching in their teeth, these spigots, and they're absolutely delightful. They were sculpted in different periods of time by, of course, different artists. When Pino and I were there recently, I enjoyed talking to this Pitigliano family about their town, and they were delighted to be photographed with the aqueduct backdropping them. Now, as you look at this, right at my back, as I took this photo, is the entrance to Palazzo Orsini. Palazzo Orsini dates from various periods of time. It was first the palace of the Aldobrandeschi family of Sovana, and it was probably built on site of a pre-existing convent or monastery, and then it will come under domination of the Orsini thanks to the marriage at the end of the 13th century between the Aldobrandeschi Countess Anastasia and the young, he was a teenager then, Romano Orsini. And then the palace is not the palace of the Aldobrandeschi, but it is the palace of the Orsini family. Antonio Sangallo il Giovane, everybody, he's the architect also of Palazzo Farnese in Rome and many other extraordinary projects. He's Florentine. In the 16th century, he will redo the Aldobrandeschi palace, reinforce it, make it a very, very strong defensive structure. It's thanks to his work. As you enter the Palazzo Orsini, you pass through a portale bugnato. We call this kind of Renaissance doorway in English rusticated. They're imitating the massive blocks used by the Greeks and Romans in their structure. This is a classic Renaissance doorway, a portale bugnato. And there's the lion there. Ready to greet you, and the lion actually was part of the coat of arms of the Aldobrandeschi family, which we're going to see. You enter into that doorway and you come into the cortile, the courtyard, and on the left is a magnificent pozzo cisterna, we would call it, a cistern well in travertine. It's hexagonal, built in the 16th century. And from this well, the servants could draw the water brought here by the aqueduct. And you can see that the well, the cistern well, is flanked by 2 columns, clearly a Renaissance structure, with Ionic capitals and trabeation. And around the 6 sides are different sculpted figures. And this one here symbolizes the union of the Aldobrandeschi family and the Orsini family with the marriage at the end of the 13th century. The Orsini symbol on the left, the rows and diagonal bands. The Aldobrandeschi symbol, the rearing lion. So this shows the unity of the 2 families, as does this shield, which is placed over a doorway near the entrance. So again, we have here Orsini, Aldobrandeschi united as one family. So after this marriage, you know, the Aldobrandeschi married into the Orsini family. They were great counts of Sovana. The transfer is made to Palazzo Orsini in Pitigliano. It becomes their residence, and Sovana kind of loses its importance gradually over the centuries. You enter into the Palazzo, where there's a stupendous museum. We're going to see a few pieces in it, through a sculpted doorway. This is all sculpted in travertine, and it's a sculptural tribute to Nicholas III, the Orsini. And Nicholas III Orsini was a great, he was probably the most important of all the Orsinis. He was a great warlord, if you will. He was very loyal to the Serenissima Repubblica di Venezia, which is the Venetian Republic. In the late 15th century, he brought soldiers and he fought with them. And right in the center is a symbol of his allegiance to Venice, right here. It is a crown with sort of spines sticking out of it, held by 2 clenched hands. And this is his motto, Prius mori quam fidem fallere, better death than a betrayal of trust. That is the motto of Niccolò III Orsini. So we're entering into his palace. We would get our tickets right over here. The ticket was a very modest fee. I don't remember how much. Bought my ticket. Started to head up the stairs, immediately impressed by the frescoed ceiling. One of the first rooms I went into is called the Room of the Zodiac. And on the ceiling are all symbols of the zodiac. And excellent, I want to say, if you go to this palace, if you go to Pitigliano, you have to go to Palazzo Orsini. There are 21 rooms. You won't see them all. I certainly didn't. You make a selection. You're given a map when you go in. I wanted to see the Zodiac room. In every room, excellent explanations in English and Italian. It is really a superb museum. So let's look at a couple of the Zodiac symbols on the ceiling. And there's 2 young people observing here, 2 groups of people, 2 young girls, a couple. That was about all. They were the only ones in the palace, really, when I was there. And here, of course, we see Scorpion and Cancer, Libra, Sagittarius, Pisces. And now we're going into another room, which is called Lo Studio del Conte, 15th century. And this room is made to look like possibly the study of Count Nicholas III Orsini in the 15th century. And right here in the center is quite a magnificent statue of him. It was sculpted in poplar wood in the 16th century. Art historians think that the master who sculpted it, it's unknown, was probably from the north, the Veneto area or Lombardia area. And the ceiling is adorned with personaggi illustri della famiglia Orsini, illustrious personages of the Orsini family. And among the faces on the ceiling, there are actually 3 women. One of them right there. Absolutely exquisite are the ceilings. Now this, you see, they had to restore. These are the original beams here. In the same room, there's a magnificent tabernacolo, a tabernacle from the Cathedral of Sovana, 15th century, sculpted in travertine. The door is quite an exquisite piece of Florentine inlay, done in gold, silver, and copper. One of the rooms, which is very beautiful and you don't want to miss, is called La Sala delle Madonne, the Room of the Madonnas. One of the Madonnas takes center stage. She's topped by a beautiful, exquisitely painted, coffered ceiling of the 15th century. Isn't that something? This building was recently restored in the early part of this century. It was restored. Let's see. I think they finished restoration around 2008. And the painting on the ceiling, the painting on the wood, beautifully restored. It's absolutely elegant. I really couldn't take my eyes off the ceilings as I walked through this palace. I went in and out of a lot of the rooms, but always what was catching my eye were the really exquisite ceilings. So these ceilings crown the Madonna. They're over the heads of the Madonnas. One of the Madonnas is the one I mentioned in the center, a Madonna con Bambino, the Madonna with child. And this is a masterpiece of wood sculpture by Jacopo della Quercia, quite a well-known artist from Siena, 15th century. Now, here's a view from the side, but I really want to zero in. I took this photo of her face. It's really something. Is that not a tender face? And he's looking at her as if to say, I know you know. And as art historians say, her look is tender sadness. She realizes what the future of this son will be. All portrayed in sculpture in this face. It's absolutely magnificent. There were two people in the room when I was. They stood there a long time, so did I. It's worth going to Pitigliano just to see this Madonna. Near her are two other Madonna masterpieces. These are from the 15th century. This one by an unknown artist is sculpted in wood, absolutely exquisite wood sculpture, the folds and the draperies, and then magnificently painted. And there is a Madonna in glazed terracotta of the Della Robbia school. Beautiful blue eyes. She's like a young peasant girl. Her hair was probably blonde. There's still a bit of her veil, but not much. Much of it is lost. And she was probably part of a much larger piece. All that we have of her is the face. In another room, there was a magnificent, beautiful, probably almost life-size statue of Catherine of Alexandria, who was martyred in the early 4th century. And this statue was done in the 15th century, and it is painted terracotta. I think in the same room as Catherine of Alexandria were the two wooden statues. They're also quite large, these statues. St. Anthony Abbot, he was an abbot in Egypt in the 4th century. This is 16th century, this sculpture. The sculpture of St. Nicholas of Tolentino, who was a saint of the 13th century. Tolentino is in the Marches area. This was sculpted in the 17th century. The sculptures were really quite magnificent. Magnificent, too, was the sculpture of St. Augustine, 4th century saint, and this was sculpted in the 17th century. Then passing through the rooms, you also come to the library with a fabulous collection of books and also including illuminated manuscripts. And then nearby, if you want to take the long stairs, long stairs lead down to a subterranean level to the Frantoio. Here the olives were pressed, and then the oil was stored in all this area, in all these niches. There were huge vats for the storing of the olive oil of the palace. Also, something curious to see here is the 17th century silver reliquary. This is silver. This is gold-plated, I believe wood, the base. This is a relic of the 11th century Pope Gregory VII. His name was Ildebrando Aldobrandeschi, and he was from Sovana, and they're very proud, actually, of being the hometown, if you will, of Pope Gregory VII, this 11th century Pope. And in Sovana, because we also visited Sovana another day, a friend and I did visit to Sovana because I'd like to do a Zoom talk on Sovana and Sorano. We actually saw the place. You walk past it, you can't go in it. They have the marker on it of the home of this Pope when he was still Ildebrando Aldobrandeschi. And after we leave Palazzo Orsini, what we really want to do is to take a stroll through the beautiful, beautiful back streets, twisting alleyways here of Pitigliano. And the homes are built in this volcanic rock. This is tuffo, tough rock, Tuff, I believe in English, tough. And vaulted alleyways. The buttresses here will support the homes to the left and to the right. Wandering Pitigliano is absolutely a gem. It's the kind of town you hope you get lost in, because around every corner there's just beauty. These women were all doing their embroidery, were very happy to greet me and delighted to be photographed. Their wash hanging out to dry above them. Pitigliano is home to many artisans. Inside this woman's shop are the looms that she does the weaving on. If you walk down the bottom of these steps and look out, you can see all the countryside. Here's another one of the beautiful back streets of Pitigliano. And when Pino and I walked through Pitigliano, he was happy to point out to me something I would never have noticed. He's tracing here. He showed me all the way along this building. And it goes all the way around the building here, which is out of the picture. This was created by the hub. Is that what you call it? The center of the wheel of the carts of the Middle Ages. And the hub would grind into the tough rock. You can cut into it like soft cheese, if you will. So this was made by the hubs of the wheels of the carts in the Middle Ages of Pitigliano. And we can't leave Pitigliano without talking about extraordinary personage such as Elena Servi and what she did to help all the world know about the extraordinary Jewish history of the town of Pitigliano. I have not seen this film. I recently heard about it, a film of Luigi Faccini. It was produced by Marina Piperno, as you can see, and it is a documentary about Pitigliano. And the star of it is Elena Servi. She's 91 years old. She is the only Jewish woman still living in Pitigliano. And I believe her two sons live there, so I think they're the last three Jewish citizens of Pitigliano. And the film is about the history of Pitigliano, the history of the Jewish ghetto, and her objective in life is really to keep alive the story of her town. And this year, January 27th, on the Day of Memory. January 27th, as most of you probably know, was the day of the liberation of Auschwitz, 1944. And it is the International Day of Memory. She received an award from the President of Italy. She was declared Cavaliere al Merito della Repubblica, which is Knight of Merit and Honor of the Republic of Italy. And I would just like to read to you what this honor entails. This is a direct quote. The Order of Merit of the Italian Republic is the highest ranking honor of the Republic. It is awarded for, quote, merit acquired by the nation in the fields of literature, the arts, economy, public service, and social, philanthropic, and humanitarian activities. As of the end of the 16th century, Elena Servi's Pitigliano had become an important place of refuge for Jews following the papal bull emanated in July 1555 by Pope Paul IV, just 3 months after his election. He was very elderly when he was elected. He mandated this papal bull in 1555, and with that, the creation of the Jewish ghetto in Rome takes place, and countless restrictions are mandated against the Jews. And I want to, let's see, I think I've got I want to read you directly. This papal bull is absolutely appalling. The papal bull was called in Latin, cum nimis absurdum. Papal bull issued by Paul IV, dated July 14, 1555. It takes its name from those words. And these are the words of the beginning of the bull, translation in English. Since it is absurd and utterly inconvenient that the Jews, who through their own fault were condemned by God to eternal slavery, etc., etc., etc. Isn't that already appalling? The bull revoked all the rights, and I'm reading this direct quote, and this is from a website dedicated to the Jewish history in general of Italy, not just Pitigliano. The bull, because I want to give you the correct information. The bull revoked all the rights of the Jewish community and placed religious and economic restrictions on Jews in the Papal States, renewed anti-Jewish legislation, and subjected Jews to various degradations and restrictions on their personal freedom. The bull established the Roman ghetto and required the Jews of Rome, who had existed as a community since before the birth of Christ, and numbered about 2,000 at the time, to live in it. The ghetto was a walled quarter with 3 gates that were locked at night. Under the bull, Jewish males were required to wear a pointed yellow hat, and Jewish females a yellow kerchief. The Nazis are going to pick up that color yellow, aren't they? Jews were required to attend compulsory Catholic sermons on the Jewish Shabbat. The bull also subjected Jews to various other restrictions, such as prohibition on property ownership and practicing medicine among Christians. Jews were allowed to practice only unskilled jobs, such as rag collectors, second-hand dealers, or fishmongers. They could also be pawnbrokers. Paul IV's successor, Pius V, enforced the creation of other ghettos in most Italian towns, and his successor, Pope Pius VI, recommended them to other bordering states. The Papal States ceased to exist on September 20th, 1870, when they were incorporated into the Kingdom of Italy. But the requirement that Jews live in the ghetto was only formally abolished by the Italian state in 1882. Now, so the Jews were condemned to the ghetto in Rome. And what they did, many of the Jewish citizens of Rome, etc., and of the Papal States, took refuge in places like Pitigliano, because this is a Tuscan contea. And at the end of the 16th century, Elena Servi's Pitigliano had become an important place of refuge for Jews following the papal bull. And not just Pitigliano. The other towns of southwestern Tuscany also became places of refuge. For example, many Jewish refugees fled to the town of Santa Flora in western Tuscany. Now let me show you on the map some of these towns. Here we're seeing the Republic of Siena. This map is the Maremma area, 15th, 16th century. So Jewish refugees who could flee Rome and come to the Republic of Siena were safe. They settled in Santa Fiora or Sorano. There's still remnants of the synagogue there. Scanzano, Sovana, Pitigliano. And they were also safe in the Ducato di Castro. This is where Viterbo is, for example, where the Sforza family ruled. The Duca di Castro, excuse me, not the Sforza family, the Farnese family. Pierluigi Farnese, figlio naturale of Paul III. The Italian expression figlio naturale means bastard child. Of Pope Paul III was the Duke of Castro. And this painting of him was done by Titian in 1546. It hangs in the Capodimonte Museum in Naples. And so the Jews were also safe in the county of Pierluigi Farnese. His father, as mentioned, Pope Paul III. This was also painted by Tiziano and painted in 1543. And you're familiar with him if you were able to attend my Perugia lecture, and where we visited his fortress, the Rocca Paolina. Another haven for the Jews was the synagogue of Sorano. And David de Pomis, one of the most important citizens of Pitigliano, was a doctor here. Many of the Jewish families who took refuge in these places had a member or more of their family who were very important people in the Jewish history of central Italy. One is one of the most famous doctors, David de Pomis. He was born in Spoleto in the mid-15th century. He was a rabbi, a linguist, and a philosopher. He served as a doctor near Rome, but he was unable to continue practicing medicine after the Papal Bull of 1555, and he settled in Pitigliano, and he served as doctor to the Orsini family, as well as offering his services to nearby towns such as Sorano and Sovana. This is a remnant, the entryway to the Jewish ghetto of Sorano. And this is the beautiful town, also built of this volcanic rock, Sorano, not far from Pitigliano, safe haven for the Jews fleeing Rome after the papal bull of the mid-16th century, 1555. Santa Fiora was another place of refuge for them. This was under the reign of the Sforza family, dukes in Milan, but not only. They had different territories throughout Italy. Soon, the Jews were so well established in Pitigliano that their synagogue was built. It was built in 1598. The last Yom Kippur here, however, I just want to take this out, pardon me. The last Yom Kippur celebration in this ghetto, in this synagogue, was in 1959. Why? There was a lot of destruction to the synagogue with landslides in the 1960s. And it was then beautifully restored in 1995 by the city of Pitigliano. And you can now visit this beautiful synagogue of Pitigliano, the restored one. Pitigliano is known for the solidarity of the Pitiglianese with the Jewish refugees who came here. And they came from many other areas of Italy, not just Rome, but found welcoming and solidarity from the residents of Pitigliano. And it was said that their solidarity, the solidarity between Jews and Christians, was firmly cemented in 1799, when the people of Pitigliano, majority Christians, defended the Jews from the bullying anti-French military that wanted to sack the ghetto. The Jewish community's institutions were reinforced with the foundation of a library, an association for charitable projects. Rabbis trained in Pitigliano served various Italian communities, and two Servi brothers of the past, ancient or past relatives of Elena Servi, founded the first Italian Jewish newspaper. An author and rabbi, publisher, and politician, Dante Lattis from Pitigliano, was one of the strongest and most versatile figures of the Italian Jewish community in the 20th century. The racial laws and persecution of the last World War II accelerated the end of the community. After the racial laws of 1939, it was really, unsafe even to be in Pitigliano. The synagogue will close in 1960 and then later opens after restoration. A few Jewish residents remained and celebrated, as mentioned, the last Yom Kippur in 1959 before the closing of it in 1960. In World War II, many of the Jews were saved thanks to the collaboration of the townspeople. And in fact, in 2002, I think about 14 Pitiglianesi were honored at Yad Vashem in Israel. It literally means a monument, a name, Yad Vashem. The World Holocaust Remembrance Center, initiated in 1953, now over 20,000 people are remembered as righteous among the nations. And in 2008, another Pitiglianese was recognized. He was a farmer who hid a Jewish family, I think, on his land for about months. He was recognized also as righteous among nations. So the collaboration in Pitigliano with the Jewish citizens and the respect for their community has also been evident thanks to restoration of sacred sites of the Jewish community, including the cemetery outside the walls. You cannot visit the cemetery. I think you can visit it if you get special permission through the cultural association called Little Jerusalem. The cemetery, the Jewish cemetery, Cimitero Ebraico, was initiated in the 16th century, and it was initiated at the order of one of the Orsini counts, Nicholas IV. And he had it built. He wanted a tomb built for the wife of his doctor, Diplomas, who was already mentioned. And that is when the cemetery, the Jewish cemetery, was started. And it was started at the will of one of the Orsini counts. And it's been recently restored. And it is outside the walls. Cypress trees are often surrounding cemeteries, whether Christian ones or Jewish ones, lay ones. They represent infinity reaching to the sky. And here are some photos, which the association Piccola Gerusalemme, Little Jerusalem, has allowed me to use for this talk. These are some of their photos of the Jewish cemetery. Look at the rocks put here for remembrance. Other initiatives indicating the collaboration of the Pitiglianesi with Jewish citizens, their attempts to remember Jewish heritage, include the production of kosher wine in the Pitigliano cooperative cellars. And they produce a red kosher and a white kosher. And keeping alive the Jewish history of Pitigliano is above all La Piccola Gerusalemme, the Little Jerusalem, the Cultural Association founded by Elena Servi in 1996. And it promotes initiatives for the diffusion and appreciation of the Pitigliano story. And as I walked through the back streets, I came upon the entry into it, carved into the tough rock. This is a photo of Elena Servi. This was given to me also by the center. She was born in Pitigliano in 1930. And this is a map of the Little Jerusalem, the ancient Jewish quarter. And as you can see, we're going to see pictures of it. It includes the ritual bath, the kosher cellar, the ancient synagogue, the kosher slaughterhouse, the matzo oven, the dye works and conference rooms, a museum. And in 2003, they initiated didactic tours, which take you through giving you the full history of the Jewish ghetto. I just want to show you this. As you can see, when you enter into here and enter into the synagogue, excellent explanations are there for you in Italian and in English, absolutely not to be missed. Part of the Little Jerusalem Association is their Museum of Jewish Culture as well. And these are some of the back streets very near the synagogue. And this is right in front of the entry to the synagogue. A little girl named Julia was sitting there, and her parents were near me when I took the photo. They were very happy to have her photo taken. They had just visited Piccola Gerusalemme. They were from northern Italy, not Jewish at all, and extremely impressed by what they saw, as I was. And so if right behind me, as you look at this photo, I'm taking the photo, right behind me is the entrance to the synagoga, financed by, I believe he was a tailor, Leone di Sabato, in 1598. Now, as I entered the synagogue, I saw these names on this plaque, and I was extremely curious. I was mystified because I had heard that in World War II, none of the Jews of Pitigliano were taken at the time of the Holocaust. They were, you hear stories again and again by many, including Elena Servi tells her story. She was hidden in a grotto near a rural house by a farmer. She, her parents, and, food was brought to them and everything. And so I was mystified by these names. These are people who, it said, found a horrible end in the death camps of the Nazis. And I asked the woman at the entry, I said, I don't understand this, because I understood that no one from Pitigliano was taken. And she said with a smile, she said, no one who remained in Pitigliano was taken. But these were Pitigliano citizens who for work or for whatever had gone to other cities, and they were taken in other cities, in Rome, whatever. So in Pitigliano, none of the Jewish population was taken, no one, and they were saved thanks to the collaboration of the Pitiglianesi. This is the entrance to the synagogue, restored recently. La Sinagoga di Pitigliano. One of the photos in the museum is this one. This is a bar mitzvah of 1936, the Jewish community of Pitigliano. In 1938, there were 60 Jewish residents of Pitigliano, which was half of all the Jews living in the Maremma area. In the 16th century, out of a population of 6,000 people in Pitigliano, 500 were Jewish residents. This is a bar mitzvah photo of 1936, and I think they told me she's in the front row right. I think this is probably little Elena Servi, who was born in 1930. It's either here or here. They told me it's one of the little girls in the front, first row right. And you enter into the former area of the ghetto, the ancient Hypogeum, which would be an underground area. And this is an area that was all cut into the Tufo rock between 1622 and 1861. And I wanted to read you what Francesca told me. Yes, here it is. I asked Francesca, who worked at Piccola Gerusalemme, about the history of the Jewish ghetto here and everything, and the relationship of the people of Pitigliano to the people of the Jewish ghetto. Now, Francesca works at Piccola Gerusalemme. She's not Jewish, of course, because as I said, now in Pitigliano, there's just Elena Servi and her two sons. And I asked her, what about this rapport between the Christians and the Jews in her town? And she explained it to me this way. This is an exact quote, translated from the Italian. We're a small town, far from the political and social influences of the grandi centri, the great centers, the big centers. This has been responsible for the harmony between Jews and Christians. Here in Pitigliano, for example, we have always indicated someone as, for example, Roberto or Francesco, but never as Jew or Christian. So although the Jewish population is missing today, that old relationship of friendship and solidarity continues in other forms, including the restoration and conservation of the cemetery, the Jewish monuments, the synagogue, and all these ambiances of the Little Jerusalem, all restored at expense of the city of Pitigliano. This is the entrance into the kosher cellar. So all this area dates from the early 17th century to the mid-19th century. This is the cantina kasher. They say kasher, also kosher, but most of the signs say kasher. And this is the wine cellar. Entry into the wine cellar through the carved tuffo rock. The area of the ritual bath with the mikveh. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. If I have any Jewish friends listening to me, mikveh, I think. The place of the sacred waters for the ritual baths. This on the left is the area of the kasher slaughterhouse, and you see two signs because there were two different ambiances actually down here. This is the area of the forno kosher or kasher, that is the bread oven, kosher bread oven for the baking of the adzimeh. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And it was in use until Passover of 1939. And then everybody, no, because the Mussolini racial laws have been passed. So it's absolutely too dangerous. And there are some photos in here which date from before 1939 of the baking in the oven. And there's the women who are making the matzah, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly, the unleavened bread. And before we end, I must tell you about a sweet that is made in Pitigliano. This sweet is called, well, plural, you'd call it sfratti. It's a rolled sweet. It's filled with nuts, and I believe nutmeg and a few other spices. Its name signifies notifications of eviction because it's meant to symbolize the tubes carried by military soldiers mandated by Cosmos II of the Medici to evict the Jews in the Duchy of Tuscany. That is, they had to be warned to get out and get to the ghetto. Leave your home and get out and move to the ghetto. So the sfratti is the sweet of Pitigliano, and it's called notification of eviction. And Elena Servi makes delicious sfratti. I haven't met her. I hope to meet her. I've been delighted to hear her story. I was enthralled by Piccola Gerusalemme, which she started. An extraordinary woman, again, 91 years old. And I hope sometime on a visit to Pitigliano, there's some way that I can personally meet her and congratulate her for all the extraordinary work that she did. So Pitigliano, an absolutely fascinating and charming town of southwestern Tuscany. It's probably only, as I mentioned, about a 40-minute drive west of Orvieto. It really is a not miss place. Thank you very much for being with me. My apologies to any Jewish friends for any misspellings. And I thank you very much. I would just like to read one statement about Elena Servi before I close, because I thought it was quite stunning. Elena After she received the award, many articles were written up about her, and there was a professor of psychiatry, actually, at the University of New York, and he wrote a comment about the film in which she starred, and he made tremendous praise to Elena Servi. And I just want to see if I have it here. Let's see if I can find this for you. Let's see. The Jewish community. Okay. Hold on, excuse me. I should have had that right here. Here it is. And this is his comment on the film and her. Even in the depths, and I think it's a perfect way to close. Victor Fornari, professor of psychiatry, New York University School of Medicine, and director of child and adolescent psychiatry, said this: even in the depths of one of the darkest periods in the history of civilization, there are shining rays of light and hope singling out the best of humanity. Elena Servi, delicately and elegantly, provides for us a glimpse into the life of an Italian Jew who grew up during the 1930s in a Tuscan city, Pitigliano, and describes with poignant detail the manner in which Jews and Christians coexisted amicably for thousands of years in Italy. Today, at a time in world history when one questions man's inhumanity to man, this moving and provocative film stirs our emotions in a way that is simultaneously gentle and powerful. It's a film you may want to see. Grazie, buonasera. Thank you for being here.